สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ So tomorrow is the Uposatha, and it will be the last day of this group intensive retreat for this month. We'll have another one in September and another one in October. Tomorrow after the afternoon session, then be returning to a less structured schedule, although in the evening, of course, there's the Uposatha and the evening meeting. And I think this has been a very useful period, one which has really managed to stitch a lot of things together, bring a lot of the energy together in the community, and the important thing now, of course, is to continue and not allow the momentum to flag or to lessen in any way, and to be very diligent in maintaining this attention to formal practice throughout the whole of the Vasa, the whole of the rains retreat. The periods of formal practice and can be very enjoyable for some members of the community, and not so enjoyable for others, or even each person may find that their feelings about it vary and change over the course of the retreat, over the course of the period. But if we have a foundation of faith and confidence in the process, then that carries us through the ups and downs. It gives us a perspective on them. We don't need to be so elated when things are going well, and depressed when things are not going so well. When we have an overall an overview of what we're doing and being willing to learn from our experiences as we go along. So we maybe look back to periods in our practice a year ago or 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or whatever, and realize that our appreciation of the value of a particular period now is perhaps quite different to what it was at the time, and that we see sometimes the periods when we thought things were going very well, when perhaps they weren't in the way that we thought they were, and we were getting lost in something or indulging in something or in a dead end, whereas the periods which were quite difficult and a lot of stuff coming up, feel that was actually a very productive time for us, and seeing how our attitudes and perceptions of things that take place do vary is through this whole process of unfolding, and it's difficult in that we're doing this thing we've never done before, and changes are taking place, and we're not really always sure whether they are positive or negative changes. I was thinking once, if you were, as you approached puberty, if you were living by yourself and didn't know any adults, and then suddenly, the age of about 12 or 13, all these really strange things start happening, and you didn't know what the end product was, you'd probably be really shocked and frightened, all things starting dropping and sprouting and all kinds of things going on. And when you have an overall kind of understanding of what happens to a human body at that age, and what will be the end result of it, it's not so unsettling. But if you were in a situation where you didn't have that, or at least only in a very vague kind of way, it would probably be very disturbing. Or perhaps if a woman becoming pregnant, for instance, not knowing what pregnancy was, and then just how frightening that would be. So in spiritual life, these sort of changes take place, and some of them can be unsettling because perhaps things don't change in the way that we expect them to, or things suddenly change after a long period of seeming to be just sort of at some kind of plateau, or nothing very much happening, and then suddenly something quite unusual or strange happens and unprecedented. Where does that come from? So one of Ajahn Chah's sayings was, anything can happen. He said, when you start training your mind, anything can happen. And this came up when he went to see the Ajahn on the mountain in the Kon Panom, and was talking about his meditation practice and the nimitta that he was struggling with, in which he felt that he was coming to a precipice and he just couldn't go any further. And the Ajahn he went to see said that's nothing. There's all kinds of things that can happen, even stranger than that. And related how one time he was walking Jongkrom, and then he found himself walking down into the ground and feeling himself step by step sinking into the ground until he was completely submerged, and then kept walking, and then his body rose up through the earth, through the ground, and then went right up into the air, into the treetops, and then exploded. And he could see all his intestines hanging from the branches of the trees. And he said, so anything can happen when you're meditating, and just don't take it too seriously. Even when your intestines are hanging from the branches. So I think maybe a number of you, the same as me, have some memories from childhood of particular kind of stories and movies and things that seem to express some kind of point that you carry around for years and years. And one I'm reminded of for some reason here is a movie that I greatly enjoyed when I was a child, and it was about it was set in the Second World War, just before D-Day, and the Allies were trying to think up all these kinds of means of fooling the Germans as to where exactly they were going to land. And the British Secret Service came up with this clever plan of picking out one of the volunteers at the spy school for a special mission, they decided they didn't want the most geng one or the most promising recruit, but they wanted the one who had a yellow streak. So they set this attractive young woman agent to sort of keep her eye on all the men on the spy school and to see which one was sure to was a sure coward when things got tough. And of course there's an unexpected explosion and this guy jumps under the bed, and, he's the one. So the idea is that they drop him into occupied France or somewhere and give him all this information, which he to set up some kind of network, and he believes this is all to be true, but in fact it's all false, and they engineer it deliberately so that he'll get caught and tortured by the Germans, but because he's a coward, he won't get tortured very much, and he'll give them all the information. So this is the typical sort of cynical, cold-hearted British intelligence operation, and so everything goes according to plan. He's very nervous, and he doesn't know whether he can do it or not, and it's incredible kind of battle with himself to set off and get into plane and to jump out with his parachute, and lands in this field in rural France, gathers up his silk parachutes, just burying it. He's going to meet his contact, who's on a little bicycle in the lane somewhere, and they meet a roadblock, and they're captured. It seems like the Germans have some advanced information, and all these secret agents, they have a cyanide pill in their tooth, and he's got this cyanide pill, and they don't put any cyanide in it. Our poor guy sees these Gestapo officers and everything. He's just absolutely scared and bites on his cyanide pill, and nothing happens. So they get him to this local Gestapo headquarters and start torturing him, and somehow he finds some part of himself that he didn't know existed before, and completely against the odds he bears up against the torture, and as a kind of spiritual, as we can say, a spiritual transformation, and that he finds a courage that he never knew existed, and he almost dies, but then D-Day overtakes events, and eventually he's liberated from the prison in which he's languishing, and then the woman agent has to break the news to him about how he's been deceived. That's kind of the last scene in the movie, and it's one of these little kind of pavement cafes, and all around everything's in ruins from the bombs, and the church towers in ruins, and sitting there at this cafe, and it's very difficult for her to admit that she's betrayed him and cheated him, and so has his country and his, everything he believed in. It was all a big deception, and she finds it very difficult to tell him. And then when he does, instead of being incredibly angry and bitter, he just takes it very calmly, and he actually says, "Well, I wouldn't have had it any other way," and he's this peace with himself, because it's what he's realized through that ordeal made the betrayal and the terrible suffering actually worth it. That's the end of the movie. I was, when you see something as a child and seem to express something to you, and I don't always this idea of the terrible sufferings and pain and difficulty, and can lead to unexpected spiritual treasures, and it doesn't matter if you're misguided and the whole thing's whatever the background is and what particularly leads you into that and what your overall understanding of it is. And so I feel that as in our practice sometimes we can feel this incredible kind of doubt about everything coming up, and is this really true after all, or am I being deluded, or am I doing the right thing? And every kind of doubt can arise in your mind, and do I have what it takes? And but you don't know until you do it. This is where you have to have that kind of confidence. Fortunately for us, the Buddha is far more reliable than the British Secret Service, and it's incapable of lying, incapable of misleading anyone, even for wholesome purposes. So the difficulties or the ease which we experience on the path is really beside the point. Reading, as you know, I've been going through the Dhammapada this Pansa, started to, and just surprising in a way, although just how often the words for delight come up in these verses. How the monk delights in heedfulness, delights in being mindful. How he delights in the abandonment of evil and the development of goodness. And so there is so much delight and joy to be found from each step of the way, without having to wait until the end of the path. But when we understand and have faith in the value and the significance of every moment of mindfulness, and the karmic significance of every single act of letting go and abandonment of unwholesome tendencies, and the karmic significance of every act of dana, of kindness, of generosity, every act of restraint of sense faculties, every single effort that we put into our formal meditation. These are how we are creating our life and transforming ourselves, and there's no other way to do that at all. The path of practice is as available, as accessible now as it was 2,500 years ago. We're living in an era far removed in many ways from the Buddha's time, and yet there are Aryapugalas around in Thailand, probably other places. I don't know. I haven't lived in other Buddhist countries. There are great masters around. In some ways, we can say we're at a disadvantage compared with people of previous generations. We look back at the time of Ajahn Mun, for instance, and yet very difficult to even hear of Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Cha as a young monk in Wat Barns around here, and there were senior disciples of Ajahn Mun in Ubon, just 10, 20, 30 kilometers away. One year when Ajahn Chah was in a village monastery, Ajahn Phan was staying in a wat in Warin, Wat Suk Samran, and was teaching meditation to the senior monk in the city, and Ajahn Tongrat was up in Amberkirng Nai. So there were all these great monks around, and yet Ajahn Chah didn't know anything about it because the communications were so poor in those days, and there was just no way that you would get to know about, who was around and what was going on. And these days, maybe there aren't so many great masters around, but the access we have to their teachings is unprecedented. We have tape recordings of arahants and great masters talking about practice. We have books. We have things that people in previous generations didn't have. So apart from our own, the teachers that we live with and the community and the good friends that we live with, all the information that we need on the path is there and available. And as far as what we need ourselves, well, need a body and a mind, basically. 5 khandhas, which we all have, and reasonable level of physical health, which we all have, support with the requisites, which we have in abundance. So we do have a really wonderful opportunity to practice, but it's finding that accessing that consciously developing faith and confidence in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, faith and confidence in ourselves, in our own ability to realize the truth, and in the words of Ajahn Chah, being willing to put your life on the line, to really commit yourself to the practice, not being overly strict and harsh with yourself to the extent that you become tense and irritable, but not being too lazy and indulgent and too easy, so that you never build up any momentum in practice, but seeking for the golden mean or the middle way, learning how to put forth that very steady practice that Ajahn Chah always patipat by rui. It means it's very continuous, and that's the trick, the secret more than anything else, is continuity and constancy of practice, rather than some great heroic effort for a week or two, or even a pansar or two, but being able to maintain that constancy and evenness of effort. And in the meditation itself, there's not one fixed way of practice. There's not one fixed mode or even pattern of practice. It does vary very much from person to person. One of the most clear or useful ways of talking about this is Ajahn Mahaboer's division into those for whom wisdom informs samadhi, or obrom is the word, and those for whom samadhi obrom panya, or samadhi informs panya, and points out that some people's minds are such that they can take a very simple object, like a mantra or the breath, and apply themselves to that very conscientiously, and their mind will become calm eventually. Whereas other people can't do that. they're not able to calm their minds to a level where they go beyond the hindrances or into jhana with that simple, straightforward kind of technique, which he calls samadhi or brahmanya. But they have to use the technique of panya or brahm samadhi, which means there needs to be reflection, investigation, to help the mind to calm down. So that may be actually experimenting with more discursive meditations at some part of the day or at some periods in practice. Or it may mean that when the mind reaches a certain level of calm, that it's at that point which then there must be some investigation of Dhamma. It could be investigation of the body, investigation of Four Noble Truths or whatever, but to take the mind further into calm. So, to speak in a more technical way, some people practice with the meditation object and can go straight into appana samadhi with the meditation object. After the mind is rested in appana samadhi for a certain period of time, it's full, it's had enough rest, it's energized, and you would say it withdraws from appana samadhi into upajjhara samadhi, and in upajjhara samadhi the vipassana investigation of Dhamma, the five khandhas, can take place. And the classic pattern here is that the investigation takes place for a certain length of time, and then it's as if the mind becomes tired with the work of investigation, and then it returns or is taken back into samadhi to rest in the appana samadhi, and then withdraws again to do the work of vipassana. So this idea of appana samadhi as being a place of rest and accumulation of energy and power of mind, and upajjhara on withdrawing from appana as the time for investigation, this alternation between them. And this is the way that Ajahn Chah practiced. He had the samadhi or brahm panya mode in his own practice, I believe. Other people may reach the upajjhara level through use of the meditation object, and then the mind won't go any further. It won't go into appana. It just stays in that level, upajjhara. And then our teachers tell us to, if a mind is of that nature, then to investigate at that point. So there are two upajjhara samadhis, as before appana and after appana. If the mind has a particular nature where it will only go into upajjhara, it won't go into appana, then the teachers say to develop the investigation of dhammas in the upajjhara. For some meditators, that investigation will be a cause for the mind to enter appana or jhana. For others, the vipassana may take place, and there are some individuals who can reach stream entry or stages of enlightenment in that upajjhara before appana. This is the view of I think all of Ajahn Mun disciples that I'm conversant with, whether it's Ajahn Mahabur, Ajahn Ajahn Cha, Ajahn Ted, Ajahn Jua, and all these teachers will say that some meditators the mind in that upajjhara stage will go all the way without going into jhana. But I think for the majority of people that the discipline of investigation in upajjhara is not strong enough at that point to take the mind out of the world of the defilements into the lokuttara stage, but will lead to the appana, which will then go into upajjhara. So this is the basic kind of overall picture that is given in the teachers of the forest tradition. They don't talk about first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, hardly at all. They talk about upajjhara and appana. And they also say that those who have the more investigative kind of mind, the meditation, and so this is like an intermediate stage before going into the full appana, which is just a very complete stillness, bright stillness of mind, complete mindfulness. And he says that they say that some meditators may doubt at this point whether their minds are not really calm because there is that background activity. But they say that this is not something to worry about. It's just that the wisdom character is such that a certain level of samadhi can coexist with thought, whereas the samadhi character, the person who has this kind of gift just to concentrate and focus on something and go straight into the object, the slightest arising of thought activity will bring the mind out of that state. There's no tolerance of thought in that kind of mind, whereas the Panya mind can be concentrated even with a slight amount of background noise. So this is kind of advanced kind of stuff, but I think it's useful to have the overall picture laid out to give us some idea of the practice as a whole. So working with the hindrances, going beyond the hindrances, a time when the 5 hindrances are no longer present, and there's a knowledge and awareness that are no longer present. There's a sense of ease, physical, mental ease, and a joy and sense of deep well-being at the realization that the hindrances are not present. Just as in the similes I read out the other night, the Buddha compared it to the joy of having been in debt and then having paid off all your debts and realizing you're no longer in debt, or having been very ill and then getting better and realizing that you're no longer sick, that you're healthy at last. That kind of sense of well-being, or sense of having escaped from prison or being let out of prison, or having been a slave and now being a free man, or having been lost and in a very desolate place and having found the way home. These are the similes the Buddha gave to explain this sense of joy and well-being, realization that there's no sensual desire, no ill will, no sloth and torpor, no restlessness, no doubt in the mind. So there's the almost effortless concentration and awareness, appreciation of the object, accompanied with a sense of focused energy and well-being, rapture. these are the what we call the jhana factors that are present, but are not yet very stable. They don't have the stability that they do when you go on to the next level of appana samadhi. But as I said, there are certain characters where they get to that upajjhara level, and the mind won't go through mere concentration on an object. It won't go any further. And for that, if you're of that nature and you have that kind of mind, then that's the time to develop some investigation of the three characteristics, as an investigation of your present experience in the light of the three characteristics. And this may give the impetus to carry the mind into appana. Or if you are a particularly gifted individual, it might lead to the vipassana that allows you to let go of attachments to the five khandhas at that particular level. If the mind goes into appana samadhi, it does that by itself. You don't have to force it, and you shouldn't try to interfere with it in any way. And depending on the power of your mindfulness, the parami, the accumulation of samadhi, it will stay in that state for a shorter or longer time. And then as it withdraws from that state, is the point where there must be this firm intention to develop vipassana. Some meditators, as the mind withdraws from that very deep state of samadhi, just think that's it, that's the end of the meditation. Just want to finish. I just want to go straight back into that state. And it can lead to a sense of attachment to that. Another problem can be on the emergence from that state of appana samadhi, then various very vivid nimittas can arise. So these nimittas can be visual, audio, they're mind-made phenomena, but which seem extremely real, and they arise in upajjhara samadhi, either before or after this appana state. So coming out of appana samadhi, some meditators can have visions of heaven realms and hell realms and all kinds of things, and it can be a temptation to absorb into them, or to experience a very strong sense of faith and energy and other kind of wholesome dhammas, and then to grasp onto them as evidence that one's actually attained something, and they become what we call a vipassanupa kilesa. So Ajahn Chah used to be quite withering about people who grasp onto these kinds of phenomena or wholesome dhammas as being evidence of enlightenment, and saying that these days people are when they're so-called arahants, and they have to go and tell everybody all about it. It's not like the arahants in the old days, and who didn't make such a big fuss about everything. I mean, the arahants these days make a big nuisance of themselves, he's saying. I mean, arahants in inverted commas, not real arahants, of course, but I think the tendency to overestimate one's experience in meditation is almost impossible to resist, unless you've got someone who's kind of fierce, or you've got this constant reminder, and from the beginning, it's maineh, it's not sure, because we do have a tendency to think that the more intense an experience is, the more real it is, and this kind of experiences when the mind's very calm impress the mind very, very strongly and very deeply, and have a vividness and a clarity that we don't experience in normal waking experience. So very compelling. And this is why Ajahn Chah was constantly telling his students, don't believe any of it, don't take it for granted, don't give it too much importance. Just say it's not sure, and just bear with it and look at it and examine it and learn from it. So there's that time when Ajahn Chah went to England, and someone asked him a question that they'd been studying Mahayana Buddhism and a little bit confused about arahants and bodhisattvas, and I'm not really sure, should I practice to be an arahant or should I practice to be a bodhisattva? And Ajahn Chah says, don't be any of them, don't be an arahant and don't be a bodhisattva, don't be anything at all, because as soon as you become something, then you're going to suffer. So if you're an arahant, you'll suffer, and if you're a bodhisattva, you'll suffer. So just don't be anything at all. So this is really not what people want to hear very much. But these are the, as I say, we're so fortunate to have either heard ourselves, in my case, fortunate in that way, heard or heard tapes of, or recorded transcripts of talks by monks and teachers who have taken this practice all the way, and these are a great resource to us, and to be remembered and to be borne in mind. This is the Pariyatti Dhamma. The Pariyatti Dhamma is that Dhamma which should be learnt and which is of use in Patipatti Dhamma, the practice of Dhamma, which leads to Pativeta Dhamma, the experience of the realization of the truth. So when we're going to study, how do we know what to study, how much to study? Well, whatever leads on to Patipatti, that's Pariyatti. And how to practice, what to practice, that which leads on to Pativeta, to realization of the truths. This is dukkha, this is the cause of dukkha, this is the cessation of dukkha, and this is the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. So I would like to offer these few words to you this evening.